Hi. Official recaps here.
The film opens with an injured coroner crawling across the floor after a brutal attack by Art the Clown. He reaches for the phone to call 911, while Art nonchalantly looks himself in the mirror and writes his name in his own blood. To finish him off, he goes for a reaction hammer. He shatters his skull and tears it apart in order to extract his internal organs, including his brain and eyes, simply because he can. Unbeknownst to the sleeping employee, he then proceeds to a laundromat in his gory splendor. Art takes off his outfit and throws it in the washing machine. The clown is passing the time by reading the newspaper when he stumbles across a small girl dressed as a clown. She approaches Art with curiosity and begins playing with him. When the employee awakens, he sees Art playing with thin air, which leads us to wonder if the little girl is only a fiction of his vision. We show Art exiting the laundry after killing the employee by impaling a mop handle through his head a time later. We then jump ahead a year to a teenager called Sienna Shaw in her candle-lit bedroom. She's concentrating on creating her homemade warrior Halloween outfit, which includes wings and a sword. Her late father, who died recently of a brain tumor, devised the costume, which means a lot to her. During supper with her family, Sienna's mother, Barbara, inquires about her brother, Jonathan's, Halloween costume. Jonathan expresses an interest in dressing up as the infamous clown serial murderer from the news, causing her sister and mother to object. After dinner, Sienna discusses her brother's interest with serial killers with her mother, while upstairs, Jonathan is studying the previous year's murdering episode involving Art the Clown. Later that night, Sienna has a dream about being in a clown cafe and meeting Art the Clown. He begins by entertaining everyone present by throwing them candies, but Sienna appears uneasy from the start. When it's Sienna's turn, Art presents her with a soup containing a really horrible throbbing heart and worms. The box eventually begins to fill up with blood, and Art ultimately abandons the act by pulling out a submachine gun and killing everyone. Despite this, Sienna survives and attempts to flee. With a flamethrower, the clown burns the remaining guests and the guitarist. Art moves up to Sienna to finish her off after torching the place with a flamethrower. As the clown prepares to burn Sienna, she draws the warrior's weapon from her room to protect herself. She abruptly awakens to discover the wings for her outfit on fire. She tries and fails to put out the fire, so she rushes out of the room to summon her mother. The mother is obviously furious and begins chastising daughter for leaving her candles on when she went to bed. Sienna, on the other hand, insists she extinguished the candles. After her mother has departed, she steps up to what's left of her wings and discovers that the sword her father gave her has not been damaged. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the story, Art the Clown and the little clown girl are watching a talk show where Vicky, the single survivor from the first film, is being interviewed. The clown gets up and smashes the TV as Vicky believes she saw Art commit suicide. The following day at school, Sienna's brother Jonathan raises his hand to go to the restroom. On his way to the bathroom, he comes into Art the Clown and the little girl, who are playing with a dismembered dead possum. They toss the dead possum at Jonathan when they see him. Terrified, Jonathan flees until he comes across a teacher, who chooses to investigate the scene, only to discover the dead possum. Sienna and her buddy Allie go to a costume shop after school to get a new pair of wings. While Sienna is busy shopping, Allie runs across Art the Clown but doesn't look twice because she thinks it's just a person dressing up as him. Sienna soon notices Art at the shop, staring and smiling at her. This frightens her, so she dashes to the cashier to pay, only to find she's forgotten her bag downstairs. Art then drops her purse on the table, startling her. The clown then follows her around, making funny gestures behind her. As the shopkeeper goes to collect the bag, Art approaches and begins poking her, which makes the girl feel uneasy. When the shopkeeper notices this, he scolds him, and Sienna decides she doesn't want to stay any longer, so she flees. Art closes the shop and locks the door when she left. He approaches the store while carrying a large bag. As he prepares to pay for his purchase, he pulls a number of tools from his bag, which irritates the shopkeeper and causes him to reprimand Art. Art slams a bottle to his head and stabs the sharp end into the unfortunate man's eye without saying anything. Sienna returns home safely and is greeted by her brother, who informs her that he saw the clown at school, as well as a little girl whose face he's seen before in their father's sketchbook. He starts showing his sister the pages, one of which has an eerie sketch of Art the Clown and other murder victims from the previous year. At the very last page, he shows her a sketch featuring Sienna in the warrior costume, holding a beast's head in her hand. Art pays a visit to Allie's residence on the other side of town, and she gladly meets him because she recognizes him as the guy she met at the costume shop. She tells him she doesn't have anything to give him before closing the door, assuming he's old enough for trick-or-treating, but he starts hammering on it, which irritates Allie. She reopens the door and stuffs some sweets into his bag, where she finds the bloody instruments. She retreats inside, terrified, and watches Art go. A few hours later, Allie is putting on makeup for Halloween when she is distracted by the sound of glass shattering. When she returns downstairs to discover her glass door damaged, she is surprised to see Art casually hanging in the kitchen. This frightens her, so she begins to flee while Art pursues her. Unfortunately, the lunatic captures her and slices her face with a knife before viciously skinning and mutilating her body with several sets of knives and scissors. When Allie's mother returns home from work and discovers the damaged door, she panics. She then goes straight to Allie's room, where she encounters Art and what's left of her daughter's disfigured body. Meanwhile, Jonathan tries to alert his mother about his father's symbolic sketches, but she's had enough of his morbid interest and tears the book up in rage, hurting Jonathan. He curses at her, earning him a slap from his mother, so he storms out. Barbara soon notices some disturbance downstairs. She then goes downstairs to see the family's car vandalized, immediately suspecting Jonathan. But, of course, Jonathan didn't do anything since he's actually out in the driveway, where he discovers a weird car in front of the house with a clown girl inside, prompting him to flee to the house. Back at the party, Brooke informs Sienna undercover that she has laced her drink with Molly. Soon later, Sienna receives a phone call from her mother, who begins shouting about Jonathan's car being covered in shaving cream, toilet paper, and eggs. After the phone call, the mother starts cleaning up the car, when she notices Art sitting inside. He shoots her in the face with a shotgun, killing her instantaneously. Sienna discovers the tiny clown girl amid the crowd at the party, which shocks her out and drives her into a panic attack. But, strangely, she appears to be the only one at the party who can see the tiny child. Jonathan returns home to see her deceased mother seated at the dining table. Art the clown then swoops in and pours mashed potato on her empty plate before putting the remainder of the mashed potato into her crater of a face. Jonathan tries to flee, but the clown girl stops him. He sneaks past the homicidal couple and heads upstairs to retrieve Sienna's sword. Unfortunately, Art apprehends him and sedates him with a needle injection. He then picks up the sword and decides to keep it. Brooke and her boyfriend, Jeff, are driving Sienna home at the same time. However, Sienna receives a phone call from Jonathan, informing her that he is at the abandoned carnival. However, it is the clown girl who is impersonating Jonathan's voice. Worried about her brother's safety, Sienna asks Jeff to drop her off at the specified location, and she departs despite Brooke's cautions. Sienna starts exploring the area when she receives a text from Jonathan stating that he is at the Terrifier, the carnival's haunted house. Jonathan awakens within the Terrifier to the sight of the clown girl, whose entire face has been mangled. This terrifies him, so he flees for his life. Meanwhile, Jeff goes outside to relieve himself when Art appears and stabs him. He then smashes the glass of the car and snatches Brooke out, but she fights back and scrambles away. She enters the eerie house to seek refuge while contacting Sienna for assistance. As she runs, she trips and goes into the restroom, where Art manages to track her down and corner her. He then hits her with a spiked bat before killing her. Soon later, Sienna enters the room and discovers Brooke's dead body, with Art standing close. Sienna notices Jonathan behind Art and calls for him to run while taking a piece of wood and striking him. Regardless, the clown manages to overcome her and beat her up before fleeing to locate Jonathan. Sienna gets up, still alive, and discovers Art's weapon nearby. Meanwhile, Art the clown follows Jonathan about, taunting him until he eventually grabs him and slices his cheek. Sienna, fortunately, interrupts him by attacking from behind, hurting the clown with his own weapon. She drags her brother along with her. She is compelled to cease due to her injuries. While she gets her breath, Jonathan apologizes, believing that the clowns merely sent him here to entice Sienna and that this is all about their father's sword. The two resume their journey out, but Art ambushes them and begins attacking Jonathan. Sienna comes to her brother's aid, but Art pushes her aside and continues to beat the youngster. The young lady does not give up, crawling across the floor to defend her sibling. After being hit several times, Sienna manages to seize the chain and begins fighting him. She beats him with it as she should, and finishes him off by impaling a rod through his head. But it appears that he is immortal. The clown rises again, and lunges at Sienna, strangling her. As the two scuffle, Jonathan notices a gun strapped to Art's leg and snags it. The boy then shoots Art, and once again killing him. Sienna passes out from the lack of air, so her brother shakes her to wake her up, but as she opens her eyes, she sees her mother telling her that she's safe now. When she comes to, she finds herself alone in the room and goes in search of Jonathan. When she discovers her brother unconscious in front of Art, she begins beating him. He, on the other hand, chokes her and knocks her to the ground. When she gets up the following time, she notices a doorway in front of her. But, as she attempts to analyze the situation, Art appears from behind her and stabs her with her father's sword before throwing her down the portal. This sends her to the water cell she dreamed of earlier in the film, which is located within the clown cafe, with a few individuals covered in blood cheerfully playing around in front of her without assisting her. She drowns as a result of being trapped. Back on the surface, Art approaches Jonathan and begins devouring his flesh, waking him up. As he attempts to go, he screams for Sienna's assistance, and the sword that is nearby begins glowing in some way, resurrecting Sienna and magically curing her wounds. She easily escapes the portal and picks up the sword, which she uses to slaughter Art the clown. She uses it to decapitate him to finish him off. She then runs to her brother, and the siblings embrace in a relieved embrace. Meanwhile, the little clown girl enters the room and picks up Art's chopped head, carrying it away.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.